would say the whole decade of my 30s, I was completely burnt out.
What was some of the worst moments?
Staying up till midnight, waking up at 5 a.m. so that I could work. And then in the day, I was watching children, I was cleaning the kitchen, I was doing and I just kept going and going for an entire decade. I really regret not getting more help. Wherever it is that you want to be, picture yourself there already and act like that. I love thinking of the butterfly and the caterpillar. The caterpillar holds the butterfly inside of it, and it doesn't know that yet.
Why do you think people consider you controversial, and what's your response?
No matter what you do, if you put yourself online, even if you're talking about teacups, someone's going to hate you. I think a lot of times we just accept other people's opinions as reality. They don't know what they're talking about.
I know I'm putting you on the spot.
You are, but that's okay.
I'm so sorry. Welcome everybody back to the podcast. So today's episode, we're joined by New York Times bestselling author and also the creator of the blog and the YouTube channel, The Daily Connoisseur. We've got Jennifer L. Scott here with us. Jennifer, thank you so much for being with us. It's 11 a.m. your time, isn't it? It's 7 p.m. here. How are you? How are you this morning?
I'm doing great. I actually just got back from the UK, so I was, in your time frame recently.
Oh, so you still adjusted? I bet you feel more aligned with us right now.
I do a little bit.
Is that right? Have you got family in? Am I right in thinking you got family in England?
I do. Yes, my husband's from England, and his whole family lives there. So we go there once a year, or I go there once a year. He goes several times.
Yeah, got you. Well, it's lovely to hear from you. Thank you for being here. And I want to start to just hear a little bit more about the blog, if we can, the blog and the YouTube channel, The Daily Connoisseur. I want to know, where did the idea come from? Why did this concept happen? And for those that are not familiar and are maybe hearing about you for the first time, do you want to just tell us a little bit about what it is you do on there?
Sure. So I started my blog, The Daily Connoisseur, back in 2008, and I'll get to why I started it in a minute. And then I started YouTube in 2011. So I've been on YouTube for a long time. I love it. I absolutely love what I do. And it's funny because the blog, I'm actually no longer blogging. I'm mainly doing YouTube only and focusing on my books. And that's a recent decision that, we can talk about. But I started my blog back in 2008 because I made a life transition when I was in my 20s. I wanted to be a writer and become an author. And that's something I always wanted in my childhood. And I kept that with me. That's, if anybody asked me, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? I always said, I want to be a writer. Yeah. And then that changed when I became, a teenager and I started going into drama. So I went in a different direction in my late teens, early 20s. And I was an actress for a few years, but that lifestyle just did not feel right for me. It was not my calling. Something felt off. And I really felt
What was it specifically? Was there anything you can, looking back now, you can pinpoint and go, can you see why it wasn't?
Oh, yeah. Well, I feel like when you're doing something and it feels very forced, you keep getting roadblocks. You keep feeling frustrated. If someone asks you, what do you do? And you don't feel quite right answering it, I feel like it's not the right thing for you, and I was just sticking with it because that's what I majored in theater at USC. And that was my plan. I was going to do that,
So it's like that old story that you feel like almost like you've got to keep that up because that's who I am.
Yes.
That's what I've always done. And I've invested so much time, money, energy in. And I think people do that, right? Is they end up staying in jobs, careers, relationships, because of X amount of time and investment. I think that's quite brave to go, actually, no, I can change my mind and I can start again, right?
Right. And it was a pretty bold, crazy thing because, I had invested so much into it. And suddenly I think I was about 27 years old when I'm thinking, you know what, I want to actually be a writer. I never took a writing class in my life. In college, I never took a class. It was all theater. So I'm thinking, okay, great. This is actually what I want to do. And my expensive education, I didn't even study, this. So basically when I was 27, I decided I didn't want to do acting anymore. I hated being at the mercy of producers and directors and just
Mm.
waiting for people to approve of me in order for me to work. Like, I just want to work. I don't want to wait for a room of people to accept me first before I do it. So I was over that.
You
So
won't know
what I,
this, Jennifer, but there's a lot of people in our membership that are actors, and they're just all
oh,
grinning. They're all grinning, going,
okay.
"We get
And
it, we get it."
I'm sure you do. And I don't mean at all to disparage the profession. I love
Yeah,
acting. And
yeah,
I'm sure that a lot of you will completely relate to how frustrating it is to have to rely on other people in order for you to work. That was the
yeah.
hardest part. I just wanted to act, but I'd go to auditions and callbacks and second callbacks, and then I wouldn't get it. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I have to start over again. And I just want to work. So that was very frustrating. It didn't really work with me. Um, However, we'll get to that in a minute because I feel like I've parlayed my love of acting into my YouTube channel. And now I am
Yes,
my own boss. So that's something
yes.
that, we could talk about. But so basically, I decided that I wanted to be a writer again, but I needed to enroll in a writing class because I'd never taken one. So I enrolled in a class. I live in Los Angeles called the 90-Day Novel with the LA Writers Lab. And it was like one of the best decisions I ever made. It was a class that met in Hollywood once a week, and it was a small class of people, some famous actors actually in the class as well, and other just writers, people who wanted to write. And it was just transformative for me. And I started writing my first novel. And while I did that, I thought, I want to hold myself accountable to writing. So I'm going to start a blog. This is around the time when blogs were really kind of starting. And they
Mm.
were there, of course, but they weren't that popular. And I thought if I write a blog and I develop an audience, then I will keep writing because I won't want to disappoint the audience.
Right. So you created accountability because it wasn't just doing it for
Yes,
you. You had other people that be like, Jennifer, where's the blog this week? Right.
exactly. Exactly. So I started my blog and I called it the Daily Connoisseur because I like the idea of being a connoisseur of daily life, of like enjoying everyday life, as a wine connoisseur would enjoy a glass of wine. So that's why I called it that. And so I started it in 2008, and I had like nobody read it for a while. There were just a few people who read it, but I still kept up at it. I kept writing my novel, and then I I was married and I was pregnant with my first child, and I was a bit worried that I would lose the blog because a lot of mothers can relate to this. Probably you have children and then you completely lose everything that you were working on. You lose your identity, you lose
Yeah.
everything. And then you're like, I know a lot of them come up years later and they're thinking, oh no, wait, how do I get back to that? I didn't want that to happen. So what I did was my first child was coming, and I thought, you know what? I don't want to give up the blog. I will write 20 blog posts and I will keep them on file and I will publish them over the course of 1 week. So I'll have 20 weeks of content. That'll give me time to adjust to the new baby and not lose my blog. So I came up with this series called The Top 20 Things I Learned While Living in Paris for my blog. And it was based on an experience that I had as a foreign exchange student in Paris when I was in college. And it was like a story that I just really wanted to tell. So I wrote these 20 things. And as I was publishing them, I mean, I was like in the fog of motherhood, but I also noticed that people really liked these stories and my blog was growing and they wanted to hear more. And I enjoyed telling them. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to turn this into a book because I I had so much more to share. Now, at this point, I had written my first novel with the writing class and I had sent it out. I thought, okay, this is it. This is the beginning of my career. It was a mystery because I wanted to be like Agatha Christie. Okay. So I thought, this is going to be so easy. This book is so good. I've sent it out to literary agents. It got rejected by everybody. Okay. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, this is a little harder than I thought. But because I was so used to rejection from being an actress, it didn't faze me, thank God. And I think that that was also a part of being an actor that really, strengthened me. So anyway, I wrote my book and I called it Lessons from Madame Chic, the top 20 things I learned while living in Paris. I wrote this while I had a baby, but I had learned the discipline in my writing class to write every day. So I got up, I just wrote for 1 hour every day. And I wrote the first draft in 90 days and, the second draft in the
Wow.
next 90.
I
was
love
really
that as well, because
determined.
that highlights the idea of this, like the idea of the compound effect, right? Even though you wasn't doing hours and
Yes.
hours, you just had the
Yes.
discipline of 1 hour every day, compounded over time. Bang, there's the draft ready to go, right?
Absolutely. And you know, I think that's a misconception with writers or any sort of artist. You think you need to spend all day doing it. You actually don't. If you're really focused and serious,
Mm.
you can do things in a very short, concentrated period of time. So, yes, so I wrote the book. And then again, I'm a very optimistic person. So the second time I'm like, this book is so good, right? So I sent the book out, so many agents, you know, trying to get representation for my book. I was sure it was going to do well. And it was rejected again by everybody. And I thought, what the heck is going on here? Like, why can't they see that this book is so good? I couldn't believe it. Well, I decided I knew the book would appeal to certain people because my blog had been successful and I knew that there was an audience for it. So I thought, okay, they just don't know what they're talking about. So I decided to self-publish my book. And this was back in 2011, before self-publishing was really popular. I mean, it was very new, you know. And so I decided to self-publish my book. And while I prepared that, I thought, how am I going to market my book? Well, around this time, I was really into YouTube, and YouTube felt a bit new too, even though it had been around for a few years. So I had my blog, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to start a YouTube channel, and I'm going to market my book on YouTube. So that's why I started my YouTube channel. And I started it about 6 months before I self-published my book. And so my book came out, I marketed it on YouTube, and immediately it did really well on Amazon. And it kind of caught the attention of the, you know, the bestseller list on Amazon. I couldn't believe it. It was amazing. And because of that, it caught some press. So CNN did a thing on it. I had some syndicated newspapers cover it. And at the same time, this was, you know, in 2011, I was actually making pretty good money from this self-published book. I couldn't believe it. You know, the royalties are much higher when you publish it yourself. So things were going really well. I was doing YouTube. I was marketing my book on YouTube. And then in March, I believe, of 2012, I got an email from a journalist at the New York Times, Liesl Schillinger, and she said, Jennifer, I just wanted to let you know that I just reviewed your book in the New York Times. She said, I couldn't tell you because this is the first self-published book we've ever reviewed, and I didn't know the protocol on it. On what, you know, she didn't have the protocol on it. So the New York Times gave it a favorable review. And after that, everything changed. And my email was full of offers from agents who wanted to represent me. And I even
Oh,
had
how
publishers who
typical.
wanted to publish the book.
Yeah.
So it was just incredible. And so I found the best agent. I'm still with her today. I love her, with Trident Media. And we sold the book to Simon and Schuster. It was actually in a bidding war between Simon and Schuster and Penguin. It then went off the market for 6 months while they repackaged it, gave it a new cover. We did some editing on it. And then it was republished, did really well. And then we did 2 more in the series, and those were New York Times bestsellers. And the rest is history. I did another book as well called Connoisseur Kids, and one for Japan. So there's been so much success with the books. And over the Madame Chic book itself has sold well over almost 2 million copies at this point, which is like a tremendous achievement for someone who was told so many times nobody wants to read this book, you know, and it was rejected so many times.
Okay, there's so much, like my head's just buzzing with so many things. I think like one of the things straight away that I picked up on that I think is important for us to highlight for people is, like you said there, even though the acting wasn't necessarily for you, you still utilized the skills of acting to build your YouTube and to be able to talk on camera. So I think that's a really important message for people to reflect on is, you know, it's not a waste of your time. I don't think anything in life, because you learn skills, you get experiences that make you stronger for the next thing that you do. But also, I mean, overcoming all that rejection, you know, I think someone just put in the comments saying the art of persistence. The thing that I'm interested in your take on is many people have a lot of talent. Many people write blogs, books. Many people start YouTube channels, but not many people sell 2 million copies and get hundreds of thousands of subscribers and, you know, have the success that you have had now. As you reflect on that, if someone was in that place where you were getting all that rejection and you could kind of figure out what were the recipe to your success, really, what was it as you analyze it that helped you do what not many people do? What would you say it was?
That's a really good question. And because I only have my own experience, of course, but
Yeah.
to go back to something you said quickly is that I completely agree with you that nothing is wasted. And I
Yeah.
think that a lot of my success is in keeping a really positive mindset about that and not getting defeated and using what I could from all of my seemingly negative experiences. Because
Yeah.
when I look back now, being rejected was the best thing that could have happened to me for that book. If I had immediately sold my book, I might not have started YouTube,
Right.
and I would have just sat on my laurels and maybe did a mediocre job. Like they don't, publishing houses don't really market for you. It's really up to
Mm.
you. So maybe I would have thought, oh, this is how it is. Sold a few copies, and been happy with that. Because of the rejection, I started YouTube, and now YouTube is a whole thing of its own, and it's wonderful. And I love YouTube. So I I think maybe the secret to my success is having, I call it that Pollyanna attitude. I'm a very optimistic person. Even if someone rejects me, I think, oh, well, like this happened for a reason and something
Mm.
better is coming. I'm not going to get down over this. I'm going to take the best from every situation. I'm just going to keep going.
Mm.
There's a very famous Andy Warhol quote. It's my favorite quote, and I'm paraphrasing, but he says, keep making art. Let other people decide whether they love it or hate it. And while they're deciding, keep making more art. And I think that's my favorite quote because it just expresses what I've done is I just keep going.
Mm.
And I think that might contribute to it a lot.
Yeah, I love that. And it's kind of focusing on your passion and doing what you do and just enjoying the process rather than constantly looking at the metrics of how many people are liking it, how many people are giving me
Yes.
good. And I think that's where a lot of people fall down, right? They're constantly kind of looking at those, as we call it, vanity metrics and things like that.
Yes.
Love that. That's already, I just feel so inspired. So thank you for sharing that. Something that you talk a lot about is this idea that we should all hold high standards for ourselves. So I wondered if you could just talk about that subject and what high standards mean to you and why they're important.
That's a really good question. So, yes, I mean, I think that we all need to hold high standards for ourselves. I've been dealing with this recently because as my channel grows bigger, or as the books reach more people, I'm getting a lot of offers for things, and I have to now be. I mean, I always have been, but I have to be even more so discerning myself and have high standards for myself and think, what type of person do I want to be? What type of career do I want to have? And only align with things that will get me into that direction. I can't just say yes to everything.
But something
And
just to pick up on that then is it starts with clarity, right? Because if you don't know the direction you want to go in, people just say yes to everything. And this can be
yes,
where people then get overwhelmed because they're oversubscribed with, I need to do this, this, and this. So I think
that's right.
straight away, that's a great point is be clear on your vision. Where do you want to go?
Yes.
And who do you need to become to get there? Who do you want to be aligned with? Then when the offers come in, you're like, actually,
Mm-hmm.
we're not a good match. And it becomes easier to
Yes.
know who say yes and no to, right?
I couldn't agree more. Clarity is so important. I do a lot of journaling, and
Mm.
it's not with me right now, but I have a bunch of different journals, and one of them is specifically for content creation and work. And I write my ideas down. I haven't always been this way, but I'm now so clear on what I'm doing and what I want to do. And I also want to say to everybody to, um, hold yourself in high regard. Like, picture wherever it is that you want to be, picture yourself there already and act like that. Because I think the
Mm.
trouble with a lot of artists is that they think, well, who am I? I'm not there yet. I'm going to be there one day, but I'm not there yet. I want you to pretend like you are already there and act like that now.
Yeah.
Because you will have more clarity. People will treat you differently. I don't care if you have like no subscribers or what it is that you're doing, no followers. It's okay. Just make yourself like up there, like you want to be. And because you are that right now. And I love thinking of the butterfly and the caterpillar. The caterpillar
Mm.
holds the butterfly inside of it, and it doesn't know that yet. And one day it will be that butterfly, but it doesn't know that. So you have to be that butterfly now, you know?
I just love that. I absolutely love that. Like, guys, take notes, take notes. I think you're bloody awesome. I love you to pieces. I really love what you're about. And I love that there's an element of no nonsense. Like, you just say it how you see it. And I think that's
Yeah.
great. Now, with that, I know that not everybody loves you. We get a little bit of hate, and there's some people that would even consider you controversial. So I'm interested in, what's your take on that? Why do you think people consider you controversial? And what's your response?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think no matter what you do, if you put yourself online, even if you're talking about teacups,
Yeah.
someone's going to hate you. There's going to be like hate forums online dedicated to you. And it's, you know, it's, I've been dealing with this for quite a while. And yes, I realize that, you know, especially being on YouTube, the majority of my comments are so nice. I have really a very thoughtful audience. I mean, if you look at my videos, I'll have paragraphs from people with really thoughtful, kind things to say. Of course, I get like mean negative comments as well. And there are also, you know, forums, gossip forums about me and everything where people hate me, I guess,
Yeah.
for no other, I don't know. But what I try to do is I just completely avoid all of that. And I don't think about it. I don't waste any time on it. Those people are also on a journey themselves.
Mm.
And that's where they are right now. And they will eventually move on from that. And they'll see that it is a waste of time to even think negatively about anybody, and devote any kind of passion toward it, because it's just wasting their own life. So I do believe that all of those people will come to the realization one day. They might still hate me, like it's fine. I actually don't care, but they'll realize that it's not healthy for them
Yeah.
to dwell on these things. If I see lots of people online I don't agree with their message, I just simply move on. That's the healthy thing to do.
Yeah.
So they're just in their spot, and I don't take it personally. I really don't.
That's your answer today. I'm interested. What about when you first got here? And also maybe what was some of the worst moments, and how did you deal with it then when maybe weren't used to it? And the reason I ask is because there'll be a lot of people that really are at the beginning of their journey, whether it be building a brand or a personal brand, and they're putting their face in front of a camera, and they're really scared of getting any negative feedback. And
Yeah.
that fear of judgment plagues them. How was it in the earlier days?
It was hard. But I also, again, I think being rejected as an actress so many times also
Yeah.
prepared me for that as well. When you get rejected earlier in life, you do build a bit of a thick skin.
Mm.
So I used to, it used to bother me. Like if I got a mean comment or someone said something mean about me online, I would have a physical reaction like in my body, or I felt like a sharp, you know, a shock or something. Um, and I realized that that's not healthy, because as a YouTuber, you get, you know, hundreds of comments every day. I got a metric on YouTube saying that I responded to 10,000 comments, like, or something crazy like that, where I was like, is that possible? Actually, I don't remember. I'm not sure if that's true. I might have gotten 10,000 comments. I think I got 30,000 comments and I responded to 10 or something crazy like that. You are constantly getting opinions from people all day long. People are telling me that I'm wonderful, telling me that I'm terrible, or telling me that I'm pretty, or telling me that I'm ugly. Like I get it all, and you cannot allow that to affect your mental health. So I have right now, a very healthy block with it, where either way, the comment is not affecting me. It's that Andy Warhol quote, I am focused, because you notice he says in that quote, let them decide if they love it or hate it. Let them spend their time deciding. That's fine. That's their right. The people who choose to hate it and dwell on it, that's also their choice. But I'm going to keep going, and I'm not going to let it get me down. But in the beginning, it was very difficult. It took many years to I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that people don't like me.
Yeah, and I
You
think
know?
like just listening to you talk then, I think the the secret to it, or the key to it, is knowing who you are and knowing that what you do is authentic and you're doing it with good
Yeah.
values and good intention. I think where you get into dangerous waters is where you try and be something you're not, just to please everybody,
Oh,
because
yeah.
then they're liking you for being a facade for somebody or not. And then how do you keep that up, and how does that affect your mental
Absolutely.
health when they only like me when I'm not being me? So I think that's a
Yes.
really good thing, is just detach from it, the praise and the negatives. They're just opinions, and you just stay in
Yep.
your own lane, being authentic, being true to who you are. I want to talk a little bit about intermittent fasting, because I know this is something you've been on a journey with. It's something I'm a fan of. Do you want to just
Mm.
talk a little bit about, what your journey's been like and what you've discovered?
Sure. I have been doing intermittent fasting now for 3.5 years, I think. And I started it in 2020, right at the beginning of the pandemic. And I wanted to lose some weight. And, I have 4 children. So I was at the end of that, and I just felt slightly unhealthy. I was at the heaviest I'd ever been. So I did intermittent fasting, and I think maybe it's just my personality. I don't know. I'm kind of like hardcore with everything. I just did it, and I stopped, I just did 16/8 every day. I have since learned that you should vary your fasts, because I interviewed Dr. Mindy and she told me that. But yes, I did, and I lost 30 pounds in 1 year, and that was it for me. Like, I didn't want to lose any more. I couldn't believe it, though. I didn't even document it for YouTube because I didn't think that I would do that. I thought I'd lose like 5 pounds or 10 pounds. I couldn't believe it. So
Were
intermittent
there other
fasting.
things like that complemented that weight loss, or was it just purely
No,
that the only change? So that
I
was
didn't
it. So
exercise.
nothing. So
No,
you literally just had a smaller window to eat in. So then
that's right.
you'd be full, you've ate less, and now it's like, stop. That's my
Yeah.
eating done. And just by eating a bit less, basically every day, that's all that you needed to do, right?
Yes. So now I have incorporated exercise into my life, and I do always try to eat a healthy diet, but that was all I changed was the time. And because of the time, the amount, because what I was doing was snacking at night. I stayed up pretty late to work. And so I cut out that late night snacking. That was huge for me. So yeah, that was it. And I lost 30 pounds. I love intermittent fasting. I tell everybody about it. I just think it's like the best kept secret. It's not that much of a secret anymore, but
Yeah, yeah. Well, aside from the fat loss, what's the benefits that you find with it?
oh, clarity. I just felt like I'm not a slave to eating anymore. I've become a cool eater. I talked about that in a podcast with my friend Brian Kozlowski. A cool eater is someone who just either way, it doesn't matter too much. Like, if you, that sounds bad with eating. I love eating. I love having meals. I like setting the table. I love gourmet food. But I used to be constantly thinking about what I would eat next. And now I'm just like, I could take it or leave it. I don't care. It doesn't rule my life. So
And I think
that has been great.
that's an interesting thing, because I think if we are honest, most of us, it does rule our life. We're constantly thinking about, is
Yes.
this healthy? Isn't it healthy? Am I eating too much? Oh, I want the sugary treats, but I can't have them. And there's this constant inner dialogue of beating ourselves up, I guess. So
Yeah, that's true.
again, different things work for different people, but it's interesting. I see a lot of similarities with what you're saying. I myself, similar intermittent fasting, equally, couple of times a week. If I don't want to do it, I don't do it. I might have
Right.
breakfast earlier and things like
Yep.
that. But one thing I will say is my energy and like focus and clarity when I'm intermittent
Same.
fasting, it's so much better. So, but again,
Same.
everybody's got different body types. Everybody's got
Hmm.
different things. I think, the important message is try stuff and find what works for you,
That's right.
which I think is important.
I want to
Is
say quickly, I think the key to that is that your body's not constantly digesting, and that's why you have more energy.
right.
That's
Yeah.
that's my thought on it. But
Yeah,
anyway,
I agree. Because if you think about it, if you eat from the minute you get up, and then you
yes,
have breakfast, and then you maybe have mid-afternoon morning
snack.
snack, and then lunch, and your internal organs are just constantly breaking down food.
Yes,
Like, if any part of your body is working 24 hours a day, you're gonna get tired, right?
tired.
So
Hmm.
I guess the logic there, that makes a lot of sense, why we feel more energized when we
Hmm.
have that break. Is there anything else that, if you was to give advice now to anybody listening, in terms of kind of non-negotiables when it comes to self-care, when it comes to habits, daily practices, morning routines, those kind of things that, you know, when you do them, they set you up to have a fantastic day and they set you up for success?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm a strong believer in the morning routine, and that's just sacred time for me, and it sets me up for the day. Um, Other healthy habits that I do, I journal a lot. I do keep various journals. I keep like a daily journal. I write it in the morning as part of my morning routine. I also keep a content creation journal. So if you are, you know, a YouTuber or a writer or, you know, anything, I keep this content creation journal with all of my creative ideas separate. People always say, "How do you come up with your ideas for your channel?" I've got ideas for days. If I ever struggle to think of something, I open up my journal. Oh, this is, yeah, I forgot about this. And then I do that. So I do that. I keep a commonplace book, which is a book of uh, quotes, inspirational ideas, things like maybe if you found wisdom in this podcast, you would write it in your commonplace book, for example, you know, and I keep one of those. So journaling is a major self-care practice for me. And just I step outside in nature as much as I can several times a day. I've developed like a weird eccentric relationship with the wildlife in my I'm friends with the wild rabbit. We've got birds. Like I check out the butterflies. Like I go there, you know, because you have to when we're on screens all day long. It's not healthy. So
Completely
those are
agree.
mine.
I just like, it's something I've really got into in the last sort of 12 months ish. And just really like every morning I go out, I do a bit of grounding, I look up at the sun, I close my eyes, I spend some time.
Yes.
And I don't know if he's still on, but I just seen Tennille, a friend of mine, joined this call, and we were at Tony Robbins literally last week at the time of recording this. And because you're indoors all day in this arena, just like listening to Tony and what have you, we went outside once and there was sunshine. I was like, oh my God, that
Oh,
feels so good. And I bet he thought I was an
yes.
absolute nutter. But once you
Who
once you
cares?
kind of get that relationship with how good
Yeah.
it makes you feel to like get
Oh,
out in nature and make it part of your daily practice, you actually like really miss it. Like you say, when you're
oh
just
yeah.
indoors and you're on screens and stuff like that. So yeah, I cannot
Yeah.
advocate that enough.
Me too. It's like drinking water for me. I have to do it.
You have to do it. Yeah, exactly. I'm exactly the same. Talk to me about, obviously a lot of this podcast is around mindset, and you spoke a lot there about, you spoke about rejection, you've spoken about, you know, dealing with online criticisms and things like that. Has there ever been a time where you have really struggled when it comes to mental health and things like that? And if so, if someone's listening to this right now that's maybe not in a super motivated, positive space, they are struggling to find that kind of drive and maybe their mental health suffering, what was kind of your way to kind of come through it?
That's a really good question. I thankfully have never struggled with too many mental health issues. I have gone through periods where I felt, I think the closest I would equate it to is extreme burnout,
Mm.
which can, of course, affect your mental health. So I would say the whole decade of my 30s, I was completely burnt out. I didn't even realize it, you know, but I was trying to do everything. I was raising children. I was working full time. I was trying to promote my books. And it was all so exciting too. That's the thing. I was on YouTube. I love what I did, but I was staying up until midnight snacking. That's why I had to do the intermittent fasting,
Yeah.
or eating cereal or whatever I was doing. Staying up till midnight, waking up at 5 a.m. so that I could work, you know, squeeze my work in. And then in the day, I was watching children. I was cleaning the kitchen. I was doing and I just kept going and going for an entire decade. I really regret that. I really regret not getting more help and, you know, not doing like my self-care practices I do now. That's why now they're completely non-negotiable. And so I could see myself, I just felt physically fatigued and it was bad. You know, now that I look, I'm kind of traumatized from it all, actually, now that I look back at it. Um, so I think that that was probably the lowest part. I've dealt with a few other things like, you know, scary incidents like related to my presence online. And
Mm.
that has been difficult for me, but I've gotten through that as well. You know, I have a strong prayer life. I also meditate every day. That's been very helpful for me. And that's how I get through it.
So I guess like, yeah, just to summarize some of those solutions, it's like asking for help, not doing stuff alone, you know, getting support, delegating tasks maybe where you can, if possible. And then it's kind of going to the basics, like making sure that the good habits are in place, you know, protecting your sleep, maybe actually by saying, I've got loads to do, but I'm going to finish early. I'm going to get some
Yes.
quality rest, and that
Yep.
can wait till tomorrow rather than just staying up till late and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's something I'm sure a lot of people resonate with. When you're at the start of something new and there's so much to do and you may be doing it alone, you just go, 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 go. And I kind of have a similar story where on reflection, it's like if it takes you an extra year to get the results, but the journey to getting there was a lot more wholesome and you have
Yes.
more balance. Like pick that every time, like have patience, like you said, writing that blog, it was 1 hour a day that you did, sorry, the book, 1 hour a day, and then you had a complete book. I think that's a
Right.
really important message. I want to touch upon as well, you did a video on YouTube, which was the 5 bad habits that age you.
Oh.
And as somebody in my recent years that entered my 30s, and anybody that's, you know, beyond 30 will know when you're 20, the idea of becoming 30 was like, oh my God, I now need to think about being an old person. I'm going to be one of them old people soon. So like, I think more and more about now how to, you know, preserve my youth and all that kind of stuff. I wondered if you could just touch upon maybe a couple of those points of like the advice you give to people about what are the bad habits that age you that we need to be aware of.
Mm. Yeah, it's funny. Now I can't remember the 5 habits that I shared, but I'm
I
sure
can
I already
help.
know
I can help. I did write
what
them
were
down.
they?
If you want reminding of any of them, have you got
Yes.
any that you want me? Do you want? Okay, I think one of them was succumbing to stress. That I think was really,
Yes.
really important, and also lack of mental stimulation. Maybe if you talk about those two, I think quite
Oh yeah.
interesting.
Okay. Yeah, you've totally jogged my memory now.
Good.
I read, or recently actually, after I did that video, I watched a YouTube channel and it was a longevity expert, and I don't remember his name, unfortunately, but he said that when they studied the blue zones, the one thing that was in common, the blue zones are where people live the longest on the earth and they're the healthiest. That the major thing they had in common was not diet and exercise, it was how they handled stress. And that made a huge impact on me. And it's funny because I did mention that in that video now that I remember. And again, so it's like my whole 30s, I was so stressed out. You know, I was losing my hair, I was overweight, I was trying to like, just do all this stuff. Now there was good parts to that because I worked so hard. Now I'm really enjoying the benefits of that. But
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
what cost? And so now I'm like, okay, wait, I don't want to lose my hair anymore. I don't want to.
Yeah.
I want to take care of my health. So there is a balance there. And that is super important. I think the second, so stress management, like it has to immediately be taken care of. This is number one on your priority list. So whatever I go through my day and something is stressing me out, I stop everything. I'm like, I need to solve this. It's all mental for
Yeah.
me. It starts in the mind. If I fixate on something and I start getting worried about it and I go spiral, it's over. There's so much energy wasted. I get stressed, but it starts in the mind with me. Like, for example, when Lessons from Madame Chic was being rejected, I could have with each rejection thought, oh no, this is the end. I did all that work for nothing. I guess I'll do something else, but instead I did not even allow the thought to enter my mind. I immediately cut it off. And what I said was, they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I kept going. So I think it's so important, your internal dialogue,
Yeah.
to immediately just cut off any direction you don't want your mind to go.
I think that ties in perfectly with something Tony Robbins was speaking about at the event last week. And he said, like, the 3 biggest decisions you make in your life on like a day by day, well, hour by hour, minute by minute basis is number 1, what you focus on. And number 2, the meaning you give what you focus on. And then number 3, what you
Yes.
do as a result. So if you was to focus on the rejection and the meaning
Yeah.
that you gave it was, I'm shit, I'm terrible, I'll never,
Yep.
like, that's going to create a hell of a lot of stress, right? And then the action
Oh
you'll
yeah.
take is probably, I'm going to quit, I'll go do a job I hate or
Yep.
whatever. So I think that's a really important thing to focus on is recognize, what do I focus on? What's the meaning I give it? But also what you said there about, preserving youth and kind of the subject of longevity. I hear it a lot. Like people have health anxiety, like they're so stressed about
Yes.
not getting ill when actually it's the stress that's the
It's the
biggest thing that's going
stress.
to make you ill, right?
I couldn't agree more. It's so true.
So you got to be so careful on that. Talk to us about the idea of the lack of mental stimulation being another of the things as well.
So this is a big thing. I love talking about this on my channel. And I think that there is a problem when we become adults, especially, that we are either, doing all of our duties that we have to do, like work and family, and then we just veg out in front of the TV for several hours. And a lot of people wake up from it and they think, who am I? Like, what did I used to love? What are my hobbies? And so I really encourage adults to, it may feel weird, but like if you used to play the piano, sit down at the piano and practice the piano, or go to an art gallery, or, just stimulate your mind, basically, because we have, it's not our fault necessarily, but I feel like collectively we've all been dumbed down, just like sitting down watching reality TV marathons, over and over again. And it's so important to just, I completely, put a boundary there. And I really I read a lot. I'm constantly reading, or listening to audiobooks and listening to like classical music, things that really stimulate my mind. And so I think that that's important.
That was the strangest thing that you said, piano. Literally, I mean, I'm not great at piano. I'm awful. But I just had a mad thing while I was preparing for this podcast. Felt my energy was a bit low. And I thought, there's a piano over there in that studio. I'm just going to play it. And I've literally just been...
Wow.
Anyone on my Instagram, you can watch. I posted it just before this on my stories.
That's amazing.
And I wrote on it, how do I prepare for a podcast? By having fun. And it's just me just playing some piano. And then you said
wow.
That's what keeps us young. So woohoo!
It is.
I'm gonna look 20 at the end of today. I love it. Jennifer, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. Just the last couple of questions before we wrap up, and then kind of go into the Q&A. A question that I ask all the guests towards the end is, based on the ethos behind what this podcast is and what the membership is really, for me, I felt like traditional education failed a lot of us, in the sense that if we want to live a happy, healthy, fulfilling, and kind of successful life, I don't feel a lot of what we get taught in depth at school is giving us the tools for that. For me, the main three subjects are, mindset and mental health, and all what we spoke about today about managing emotions. I think we should be taught a lot more about that. We should be taught a lot more about physical health and nutrition. And we should be taught a lot more about finances and business and all these kind of things. I think if you really understand those three subjects, then you're going to have the tools to live a happy, healthy, fulfilling life. So based on that, the question really is, if you don't refer to the things that you were taught maybe in traditional education and think about the things that you've been taught through the school of life, and you were to give listeners just 3 important messages, 3 important lessons, 3 things that you would say, if you live by these 3 things, these will help you live a successful life. And I know I'm putting you on the spot. I do it to everyone.
You are, but sorry. That's okay.
I'm so sorry. Have you got 3 that you can think of that you would share?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the big one is nothing is wasted. Like, don't, like we were talking about, don't ever think anything is a failure or wasted. And something that may seem like a tremendous failure is actually maybe the best thing that ever happened to you. So have that attitude with every single thing that happens to you. And just know that you're on the right path. I think that would be one. I think the second one is really, it all starts in your mind, and, everything really does. And to just question, I think a lot of times we just accept other people's opinions as reality, and they're not necessarily reality. I have a really quick story. Can I share it? That has to do with this. One of the people who rejected my book said, she said, Jennifer, Inès de la Fressage's book, Parisian Chic, is coming out, and your book is too similar to hers, and, it's just not going to work. I don't think you're going to have an audience for it. And I knew in my head that my book was nothing like Inez's book. Her book is wonderful too, but my book is nothing like it. And so this person told me there was not room for both. And again, I did not allow that to be in my head. And I'll never forget this. I took a picture of it, put it on my Instagram ages ago. This is like 10 years ago. I walked into Anthropologie, which is like a really big store here in America. And there was my book right next to Inez's book on the shelves in Anthropologie. And I thought, that is an example of, because somebody can't picture it does not mean that it's not possible. So I would say that it starts in your mind. You create your own reality with what you believe is possible. And then the third thing, I feel like those are two really major things.
You feel like you just need to do a mic drop, and it's like, I don't say no
I
more. Honestly, that was so powerful.
Yeah.
I'm more than happy to leave it there, because I just feel
Okay.
like this has been such an inspiring talk, and for anybody, like the idea of doing what you've done with a YouTube channel, New York Times bestseller, all these kind of amazing accolades and achievements. For a lot of people, they're a massive dream, and to hear this story of constant rejection, but through that rejection, you used it as fuel. You found ways to redirect your focus, to innovate, to come up with new ideas, and through that, you achieved your successes. I just think that hopefully that's been a really uplifting listen for everybody watching. I also feel like we could talk about so much more. We've
I
barely
know.
scratched the surface. What I will say is, guys, we're lucky to have Jennifer for another 20 minutes or so. So please all get some questions in, and get
Thank you.
some questions in the Q&A. But just before we finish, if people have enjoyed listening to this, and maybe they want to follow you, and maybe buy your books, and know more about what you do, where's the places people can follow you? Where can they find you? And tell them about your books as well.
Sure. My author website is jenniferlscott.com, and you can find out about all my books there. My book series is the Madame Chic series. There's lessons from Madame Chic, At Home with Madame Chic, and Polish Your Poise with Madame Chic. And I have Connoisseur Kids as well. I'm working on my next book right now too. So you can find me there on YouTube. The Daily Connoisseur is the name of my channel. On Instagram, it's at Daily Connoisseur. So you could find me at all those places.
Amazing. Okay, just before we head into the Q&A now, final question. Jennifer, what is your definition of success?
My definition of success is inner peace and contentment with what you're doing.
Jennifer, thank you so much. That was amazing.
Thank you.